Hey Bookaholics, and welcome back to another reading vlog. In today's reading vlog, we are doing the first of my September reading vlogs where I am working my way through Magical Readathon. This first one is going to be a series vlog. It is still going to be spoiler free, don't worry, but I am going to be going through the Burning Blade and Silver Eye trilogy by Django Wexler. This trilogy is a sci-fantasy series in which we are following two siblings. The first one is Maya, and at the age of 5, she is taken by what is known as the Twilight Order, which is part of this privileged elite who are training her up to be a prodigy within this society. When they take her, they do leave behind a sibling, and I think it's Gaia, but it might be Jaya, it's with a G. And he is resentful that they took away his sister. They believe that they separated his family. So he joins up with a group of rebels who are against this society. This then ends up in the siblings being on opposing sides of this conflict that happens, and we get to watch as these siblings battle for each other and for what they believe in, but they are in opposition to each other. I'm very excited. I do love like a sibling conflict thing going on. I don't know where the sci-fi element comes in yet. I believe that Maya is a magic wielder of some kind, but I don't know where the sci-fi element comes in yet, but I am very excited to try this trilogy. The first book, Ashes of the Sun, I am going to be using for Alchemy so the first tier of alchemy, because it is to read a book with the sun on the cover. It has this red orb that I believe is supposed to be representative of the sun, and we also have the word sun on the cover. The second book, which is Blood of the Chosen, I am using for Hue, which is to read a book that is the same color as your birth flower. The birth flower that was used for me in the chart that G used, which is the one I will use, is a Lily of the Valley, which is white. I appreciate there's a lot of red on here, but there is also a considerable amount of white that I am using for this prompt. The third book, which is Emperor of Ruin, is for O in, is it spells and incantations? I think it's spells and incantations, maybe? You have to roll a dice. Depending on what you roll, you need to read a book that fits within that page number bracket. So I rolled and I got a 6, and with that, I need to read a book that is between 501 and 600 pages. Now, this is a tiny bit of a cheat, but if you include the glossary of this one, the book does technically end on 504, which I am taking because I'm not adding another massive tome onto this TBR at the moment. So that's what I'm planning on doing. I'm going to read these 3, and then yeah, hopefully I will give you kind of semi-regular check-ins. The hope is that I will start this one, give you some preliminary thoughts on the first couple of chapters or so, then I will check in halfway, and then I'll check in at the end, and so on and so forth. Again, spoiler free, so I will probably have less to say the further along I go, but hopefully you can still see whether or not I'm enjoying my time with it, and whether or not I find the series worthwhile, how bingeable I find it. So hopefully it'll still be entertaining regardless of it not having spoilers. Hey vlog, it is now gone midnight on September 1st. I did join the reading sprints for Magical Readathon, so I thought it would be a good time to actually check in with some of the books I have started. Now, as I said, this reading vlog is going to predominantly be featuring the Burning Blade and Silver Eye series. So I have allocated 3 days to each book, which, because this week my kids aren't at school still, and I'm doing a little bit over a week for this vlog. I'm going to be going until Tuesday, which is the last day before my kids go back to school. So I have allocated 3 days to each book, which seems doable. I am on page 206, so I am a third of the way into this first one. And so far, I am really liking this writing style. I'm really liking the way this world is described. I'm really liking the way that we're showing these characters and how distinctive they are. I have definitely felt like it kind of compares a little bit to the beginning of the Legend series by Marie Lu, where you have two perspectives. You have June and Day is like this criminal who helps the poor. He's kind of like a Robin Hood kind of character almost. And then you have June, who is like the prodigy of the state and who believes in the state because of indoctrination. And we kind of have a similar situation here between these two siblings, where you have one who is an outlaw, he's a bandit, and from the get-go, from when the prologue, when they're children and they're still together, you see that gumption that he has. And then likewise, you have the younger sister, has been indoctrinated, but also still has her own sense of morals, and she's not quite so easily shoved into a box as they potentially would like. So she kind of has so much strength within her that she almost gets away with more than she would normally be allowed to. And the comparisons between these two characters is fantastic so far. So I'm really looking forward to continuing, and I don't foresee it being a problem me finishing this by Wednesday. Alongside that, I am also slowly chipping away at To Sleep in a Sea of Stars. I am expecting that to last like the whole month. So there's no point in me checking in for that, just for you to factor it in when I'm talking about the amount of like pages that I'm reading. So at the minute, for example, I'm not doing anything because the kids are not in school, so I don't really have a hugely strict routine. It's literally just keeping the house clean, keeping the kids fed, laundry, nothing too exciting. So there's a lot of just chilling, and I get a lot of chance to read. I am not going to be talking about that in this vlog because I'm doing a spoiler vlog for it. My curveball that I have thrown myself, in a way, I needed a digital book to read. We took the kids to the park, and while they were at the park, I was just kind of sat there. So I needed a digital book. So I started the second book in the Book of Earthsea, which is the Tomb of Atuan, which I have no thoughts on so far because I've read a chapter. I don't know how many pages because I'm not reading the physical copy. I am reading the digital one. And again, it's a bind up. So the percentage isn't accurate because it's the percentage of all 6 books instead of the percentage of the book that I'm in, but it's got 12 chapters. So assume that I am a 12th of the way into the book. So far, we've been introduced to our character Tana, who is a lot more interesting to me than Ged. I'm not gonna lie, I'm having a better time with Tana. So hopefully I will enjoy this book more than I enjoyed the first one, because I did struggle with the first one. But yeah, I don't have a huge amount more to say right now. Obviously, it's just me kind of getting started with some books. So continuing a series and starting a series. I'll check back in tomorrow, hopefully once I've gotten another third of the way through. So then I should be kind of nearing the end and see how it's holding up for me. And with this one, I don't know if I'll check in daily with this one, because it's more just when the need arises for a digital book in some capacity that I would bother to check in with this one, because again, I'm not reading the physical one. I don't like reading hardcovers. This is massive. This is for my husband to read, and I have the ebook. I guess with this one, I'll just check in when something noteworthy happens. I don't even know how long it'll take me to read it, because it's not part of my Magical Readathon TBR. It's not an essential read for me. Like if I stopped it tomorrow, didn't pick it out till October, it's literally not a problem. I just like having a digital book on hand, but I didn't know if that would be necessary this month, if it would be possible this month. So I did my entire TBR solely physical books, and then I can just throw in digital books as and when, because digital books don't take away from my physical book reading time. Digital books are supplementary. It is, I'm out and about, I didn't think I would have time to read, I didn't bring my book with me, I'll pick up the ebook. So it's not time taken away from the physical book anyway, so it doesn't matter if it just languishes on my TBR for the whole month or whatever. So it's just as and when I need it. So we'll see how necessary it is. Watch it now be like essential and every week and I'm suddenly flying through Earthsea or something. I don't know, but we'll see how that goes. But for now, I will leave you with that, and I'm gonna go now settle down and read To Sleep in a Sea of Stars. So again, I probably won't be checking in with you until at least tomorrow evening once I've read Hey vlog. So it's actually Wednesday. I didn't update you last night. It was dark and it was late when I finished. So I'm here to check in now before I go continue reading this. I was thinking of just continuing reading and then updating you because I don't have a huge amount of thoughts, but I would like to get back into the habit of checking in more frequently than I have been in like any of the summer vlogs that I've been doing. You're stuck with my thoughts. Not that the book is lackluster. I'm having a fantastic time with this book. I'm really liking the writing style, and I really appreciate the way that this is paced. I think that this one does a really good balance of plot and characters because it is very character centric and the emotional stakes are there, especially because we are getting the story from siblings who still think well of one another, who do not know how the other has turned out, who have been robbed of each other, and the way that relationship is inevitably going to have to go because they are on opposing sides, and the moral quandaries and conflicts that will create for these characters. So you do need to have believable and compelling characters, which, as I said in the previous update, from the get-go you get a very clear and distinctive characterization of these individuals as well as their relationship. So that only progresses throughout the book, which I am definitely really appreciating. But it's not making the plot suffer. It's not that we're taking our time to get to know these characters to the point where nothing else is happening. On the one hand, we have someone who is potentially putting the people around him in peril for the idea of the greater good. Those around him are kind of questioning whether or not it is genuinely for the greater good or if it's for his own legacy to become like a Robin Hood kind of figure, to become this icon, this memorable person, which I really like because it's kind of pitching how both are actually important. The reason that we have these myths, the reason that we have characters like Robin Hood, it's not just so that we remember this one man. We always remember the phrase of like steals from the rich to give to the poor. We understand this. So a lot of the time you need both. You need someone who is beyond just being what you'd assume to be a regular person so that others will take action, so that others can remember the actions that this person took and continue with that line of progress. So I really like the way that it's kind of pitching that balance between, yes, he is doing it for the greater good, but he is also doing it, yes, so that he can become this icon, this memorable figure. He wants to be known, but not in this grandiose, not in this elegant, perfect way, but more as a symbol, as a message, as an idea. And normally what happens with stories like that is that you have one or two things happen. You either have the unwilling hero, you have your Katniss Everdeen's who are forced into this position and they hate it, but they go with it because they know it will help. Or you have these figures who believe that they are the be all and end all and that what they're doing is magnificent enough that they deserve remembering. What I really like about this character is that it is both. He is someone who is willing, someone who does want to become known and iconic. The thing is, this puts a bounty on his head. Like, he knows it puts him in a position of danger. He is constantly sought after by their equivalent of law enforcement so that they can come and get him because he's such an iconic figure. So it's not that he's trying to do this because it will make him famous. He's doing it so that then that legacy, that idea of this person that he is, the idea of what he stands for will transcend his lifetime. That fight, that message will either rally the people, like in Les Mis, that whole idea of because General Lamarck died, we have now, it's time to rally the people. So either his death or his life will rally people behind him who will join his cause, or his death and his life will still be used as a kind of almost proverb to be passed down the generations. So I really like the idea that he wants legacy, but not out of greed, not out of ego, out of understanding the importance of having one person you can affix an idea to so that that idea becomes tangible. And I really appreciate that, while at the same time, yes, he is trying to help the people within this society. So his perspective I'm really loving. I really like the way that it subverts those tropes. I really like the discussions that we're having in here while we're still watching him be an incredibly flawed person. It's not even like he's a Tolkien character that's like all heroics. Like he is a flawed person. He goes about things in a way that's not great. Again, he's in a position where he's potentially putting either some of his followers or some of the people around him repeatedly in positions of danger that he deems a worthy risk. You see the logic, and at the same time you don't think, oh wow, what a great guy, you know, and I really, really like the level of nuance that comes with that character. I think it's absolutely incredible. On the flip side of that, we do have our other protagonist who is part of the society and is upholding this system. And because they've been raised in it, they believe in the actual genuine principles of justice that you see throughout this system. Therefore, when she is watching other officials who have been doing it longer, and anyone who has been in a job for more than 5 years, you understand that you get jaded. She's seeing other people become jaded, but she's also seeing the way that then corruption slowly creeps in. She is seeing how after a while you get used to being able to use brute force. You get used to being able to get away with not necessarily doing all of the arduous paperwork. You get away with being able to enforce your own brand of justice. And because you represent the justice, you are definitely not going to incur the same punishments as someone who did that through vigilantism, for example. So I really, really like the way that we have this outlook, because while it is kind of having a sort of Star Wars vibe to it, apparently the author really likes Star Wars and has kind of taken some inspiration from there. I think if you actually look at the roots of it, you almost have, from the Batman Nolan trilogy, which I watched recently, which I think is why this is present in my mind, from the Batman Nolan trilogy, you have it where throughout the second film, there's so much discussion around both Batman and then Harvey Dent, and that you need both. You need someone who is the vigilante, someone who is trying to get the people to understand the injustice of their situations. You need someone who will defend the people against an oppressive system and against worse criminals. And that's where you have Batman. He comes in, he's a vigilante, he's outside the law. Later on, he is wanted by the law, but he is someone who is a figure of justice. And even though obviously this character is a lot more flawed than Batman, Batman's shown a lot more heroically, it's still that same principle of you need someone outside the law to be able to bring the law back together again when it's so corrupt. Likewise, you have Harvey Dent, you also have Rachel Dawes, is it? Whatever her name is. You have her and you have Harvey Dent, and you have these people who are within the law. And the idea is that eventually you would need to step away from Batman and towards Harvey Dent. You need someone who is this icon of justice within the system. And that's the thing that is kind of being shown here. You have her where she is seeing the corruption of her system. It's against her principles, because her principles are the way the justice is supposed to be within this system, not the way it's being used. So she's against corruption, but she's not against the system in and of itself. And I really like it when stories do that, because it's not showing that either side is right or either side is wrong. It's almost that both are necessary. But I suspect for a while we are going to have these siblings on opposing sides. I don't know if eventually is going to be a similar culmination as we get with the Batman trilogy. I don't know. But at the moment, they are very much just on opposing sides and have opposing goals to one another, because it's impossible to see a middle ground when the needs of the people and the needs of the system are diverging so much with every page. And I'm really appreciating the way that's shown within the story, that you can have good people on either side doing the right thing, but they're trying really hard to swim against the tide here. So I'm looking forward to continuing. So I'm going to go do that. I'm going to go finish up this one, and I'll hopefully either check in either later today or most likely tomorrow about this part. It's been a couple of days since I've updated you. I was really unwell yesterday, so I just didn't have it in me to be on camera. So I have some more updates than I anticipated I would. I have finished Ashes of the Sun. I actually finished this before I got unwell and I was supposed to update you the following morning and then didn't for obvious reasons. I really like this. I've ended up giving this 4 stars. It's not a perfect read. There were definitely bits in the pacing there that I think not necessarily even could have been done better, like objectively, just things. There were times where I would have preferred a moment to slow down. And then there were times where I wasn't understanding why we were slowing down here and not in the other part, which is interesting. But again, not necessarily in a way that I think it was badly done. There were just times where I'm like, oh, that's it for this scene. And I would have liked it to have gone on longer. And then there were other times where I'm like, okay, we can move now. But I think that's a me thing. with this one. But for the most of it, I really, really did enjoy this. Like I said, I really loved the way we were showing these characters and discussing these characters, and the way these characters are this like opposing sides of this war, and they are these iconic figures, and that they're both flawed, and that it's discussing things that we don't normally discuss. Like I said with Gaia, with our bandit outlaw protagonist, the fact that he is leaning in to the idea of being a legend instead of this false modesty that we get a lot of the time around Robin Hood or Arthur or any of these legendary figures, the idea that they don't want to be a legend, they just happened to be. And no, most people who become a legend, it's because they did a load of stuff, and I feel like they know they're going to go down in history. Maybe they don't always go down in history for the reasons that they think they will. I'm fairly certain that Henry VIII does not think that he would be remembered as the guy who had 6 wives, as opposed to someone who broke from Rome, someone who created a whole new faith in England. You know, he's remembered because he got married 6 times. Maybe Robin Hood wasn't expecting to be remembered for the reasons he was. Maybe Arthur wouldn't be considering, I mean, obviously these are not necessarily real people anyway, but if they were, that they're not basing their legacy necessarily on the things that we remember them for, but they know that they're committing enough deeds that they will be memorable. And it's disingenuous to think otherwise. So it's the same with this character. You know, he knows that he's going to become someone whose name is whispered. It's what he does with that. It's how he uses that. And he's quite merciless with it. You know, it's the, you know, if people die for this cause, it's a means to an end. And I really liked that it addressed that, because also it doesn't paint him as a bad guy. He's not saying that I will risk other people's lives to make me a legend. It's I will risk their lives and my life so that the legend that my name has become will invite other people to continue long past when I am gone, to continue this uprising, to continue to fight this oppression. And that is what I really appreciated, because yes, he is merciless in the sense that he is okay with death. He is okay people dying for this cause, himself included. That's why the name needs to mean something, because it needs to outlive him. And I really appreciate that. And then on the opposite side, we have Maya, who is genuinely believing that you can bring a system down from the inside, that the system isn't broken, that it just needs people to go back to actually adhering to its original principles and all those things. And I really do appreciate that, and I think that it was really well handled in here. So naturally, that does mean that then I am going to be continuing on to the next book, since this vlog is mostly about this trilogy. My kids are not here for the weekend, so I am definitely going to have potentially a lot more reading time, so I will be doing that. I'm going to be picking up Blood of the Chosen. I didn't read anything at all yesterday. Well, I did. I read a little bit on my phone when I was feeling a bit lazy. I read a little bit more of the Tombs of Atuan. I can't remember if it's multiple tombs. I've read a little bit more of that, but I have not read any more of this, so I'm starting this one today, which is a day later than I had hoped. But alas, here we are. It's a shorter book as well than the first book. I think this is about 100 pages shorter, which does make me worry this might have middle book syndrome, because if this book is shorter than the first one, then I'm worried that this book's purpose is to like tide me over until the big conclusion in the trilogy, given this one's short. Not short, but by fantasy standards it's short. That one's like 600 pages. This one is 465 pages. That's, you know, quite a considerable difference, but hopefully I will enjoy this one just as much and I will be proven wrong. But yeah, that's it for this update. I don't have a huge amount more to say. As I said, I didn't read anything at all yesterday, so I will hopefully jump back in maybe tomorrow and I'll have read a decent chunk of this one. I'll probably check in at the halfway point. I don't think with a book this size there's any point in me doing more than 2 check-ins. I'll check back in when I'm halfway and see how I'm faring, see if my fears or hopes are the ones that have prevailed. Hey vlog, I'm checking in again. Yes, I am pretty much in exactly the same spot I was in last time I updated, but this is where the light is best, so it's what we're working with. I have finished a book and I am nearly finished with the book. So I am nearly done with Blood of the Chosen. I would have updated sooner, but with it being the second book, I was going to do the like halfway point update check-in thing. It's a second book, you know, so there's a limit to how much I'm able to really talk about. I do feel like, given the explosive ending of book 1 and the way that a lot of the story kind of evolved, so we had some characters shifting into different groupings, for want of a better word. They're not changing sides, it's more just like characters that were over here, characters that were over here, that have similar principles, are now working together because they have lost the people that they were with for different reasons, fallen out with them, they've died, they've been separated. So you've had like certain shifts, you've had different shifts in mentalities for certain characters and different views. And we also did, of course, have the siblings kind of somewhat confront each other at the end of book 1. So a lot of that then comes into the fray of this one. So we've got slightly different interpersonal dynamics, slightly different character interactions, which I'm enjoying. And obviously we are also seeing the way that repercussions are playing out throughout this one, which I am enjoying. I'm also finding that this one, even though like the sci-fi elements have been there from the start, there's this one particular character who now has like quite a sci-fi role. I can't talk about it, but I feel like if you've read this, you'll know who I'm talking about. They are like, it's a role you only really get in sci-fi in terms of humans and machines, cognizance, I suppose, of those machines. I'm really enjoying that element, and it's been an interesting ride because it does still feel like a fantasy world, but it does also feel like a sci-fi world, and it's a really good mix up of the two. It's definitely like a split down the middle of sci-fi and fantasy, and I really do appreciate that. Now obviously this one is one I'm going to be able to talk about even less because I can't even tell you which characters are in it. I can't even tell you who's alive, you know, like I can't say, oh, and this character did this, because then you know that they're going to survive the first book, and the first book does have high enough stakes that you'll know who does or doesn't die. Like when I'm talking about like a romance series, I can talk about, like, you know, in the second book I can talk about the couple from the previous book. I can even talk about them as a couple because that's the whole point of a romance book, so that's fine. But with these, obviously, like the stakes are high, like there are genuinely characters that die in the first book, so I can't talk about the characters in this one without then spoiling who makes it through the previous book. So I kind of at a loss as to how to talk about it in a spoiler-free manner, aside from the fact that I am really enjoying the way that the sci-fi is seemingly amping up in here, or at least we're just kind of getting more of it in a less like world-building kind of way. And then also I am genuinely enjoying the shift in character dynamics, because then obviously you are seeing characters exposed to new characters and therefore new interactions, but also new mindsets. So people who are from different factions. The thing is, most of these characters all want the same thing, like we all do, you know, they want peace, they want no injustice. It's just the way they go about it is completely different, but also the way that they feel like society can function as a peaceful and just system. So it's ideological as well as actions that they are willing to take and that they do take, and the avenues that they have chosen. So seeing these like slightly shifted character dynamics, we also get this aspect of seeing people exposed to other characters' values and how that then might like merge or affect one another's views as well, but not in like a wholesome way every time. It's not always like, yay, isn't this great, we're all learning from each other. Sometimes it can be used maliciously, sometimes it can be used judgmentally, and sometimes it can be used as like a conjunction of your thoughts, or like, I see what you're saying, I just don't think that the way you're going about it is right, or the way that you're going about it will work. So it's been really interesting in that sense, and I'm really enjoying those themes. So I am excited to finish this, and then hopefully I will do that now. And then tomorrow I should be able to be starting Emperor of Rome, which is the last one. So that's pretty good going. And then I have finished Tombs of Atuan. I've been reading it on my phone. I did like this one more. The problem with these books is that they're both too long and too short. They feel really long sometimes in the chapters where we're so disconnected from them that I don't understand why we're sitting with this particular moment, or what we're bothering to do with full chapters, while at the same time I don't feel like I'm feeling any more immersed. I feel like a lot of the scenes go by too quickly, a lot of the action goes by too quickly. So they're either too long or too short. Either they could be a novella well, they are novellas, but they don't need to have all of these like weird bits that normally happen in the middle of Ursula K. Le Guin books where it just feels like we're meandering a bit. She could definitely have it where it's just kind of action-packed, ready to go. Or she definitely needed to like slow down, in my opinion, and I would have liked to really sit with the places and the characters and the moments more. That being said, I found Tana a much, much more palatable character, a much more readable character. I really did enjoy her perspective more. I would have, as I said, like to have got so much more from her than we get in the book. So I didn't dislike it as much, but my criticisms are still there. So the story and the character is inherently better, but all of the authorial choices are still there that I disliked from the previous book. So it's quite difficult for me to kind of, in a well-rounded manner, be like, oh yeah, you know, this is arguably a better book. I just had a little bit more connection to it, but that's literally it. All of the same things that I disliked about the first book are still there, aside from Dead, and that this one felt like it had like a teeny bit more plot to it. So I will probably continue this series, but I don't know if it's going to get any better. I will see. I'm hoping that the second 3 are going to be stronger because she did write them like later in life and she felt compelled to come back to this world for that purpose. So I'm hoping that those ones will potentially be more to my liking than the first 3 is what I'm suspecting. I'm really sorry if you can hear my children. They live here. Who'd have thunk it? So yeah, that's kind of my thoughts on those. So again, I will probably, now that I have done my update for this one, once I am done with this one, I'll jump straight into this one and then I'll update you maybe tomorrow with wherever I'm at, as opposed to just once I'm done with this. Hey vlog, it's Monday night, so I thought I would check in. I am now past the halfway mark in Emperor of Ruin and definitely gonna have this finished by tomorrow, hoping to smash out the last, I think I've got about 200 pages left. Thoughts that aren't spoilery. The start of this book definitely had a lot to continue from book 2, with book 2 very much having an ending that shifted the dynamics of the characters that we are dealing with. I mean, book 1 did as well. We had throughout book 2 different groupings of characters. At the end of book 2, we also had it where decisions that had been made in book 2 were going to eventually lead to something not great happening that would be the thing that we need to resolve throughout book 3. Now, what I think is interesting is that I do feel slightly like whenever we have these kind of books where you have the outlaw character, for want of a better word, and then you have the one that is within the system, you inherently have to make it where the naivete or the flaws of the character are, one, due to or intrinsically linked to the system. They need to be naive and flawed, and they need to bring about something that favors the system, that upholds the system. It's not really a criticism, but I just think it's interesting that whenever we have these narratives of you have one person on either side, it never really amounts to that they are both possibly taking the system down. They just have different approaches. It is always one is trying to uphold the system. It's just that they are trying to eradicate the corruption within it. And the other is trying to completely dismantle the system, as those systems cannot be dismantled from the inside. Now, as someone who liked history, I'm literally listening to history podcasts while I read. As someone who liked history, if you look at the French Revolution, you had people who had aristocratic blood siding with the revolutionaries. We literally are constantly told about Marquis de Lafayette, right? Like, Americans love Marquis de Lafayette, and he's in Hamilton. Marquis means Marquis. He was nobility. And you need people who are on the inside who want to reform a system. You need people who believe in it too on the inside. We had male suffragettes, you know, it wasn't only women. Yes, women did the most of it. Women should be the ones remembered for it. Of course they should. But we had male suffragettes. I think it's always a little bit too black and white. The ending of the second book was kind of feeling a bit like that. So I think that there was a chunk at the beginning of this that was making me feel that way. And I hadn't really thought about what was bothering me about it, other than, well, I like this character and I don't want to be annoyed at them. And I feel like like this book kind of just leaned into something that we've seen a few too many times, and I would have liked to have seen a different approach to it. Which again, it's not the book's fault. If this had been the first time I'd seen this trope, this probably would be like new favorite material. It's a fantastically written story. It's just that this is the thing that I think is potentially making me still feel a little bit more like it's a 4-star instead of a 5-star, is that it is feeling like there is one side that is more correct than the other, as opposed to just two sides of the same coin that keeps getting shat on. I would have liked a little bit more nuance there, I suppose. But I understand where it's coming from, and most revolutionary style stories, you want to side with the revolutionary side of things. You know, you want to be on the right side of history, you want to be on the right side of the fictional history. I understand. Yeah, we'll see how that continues to unfold in here. I think I mentioned it because there is like a section here where it's kind of doing a little bit more what I wanted, but I wanted it earlier on, I suppose, is the thing. We'll see how I fare with that. But yeah, it's feeling like a 4-star series, so that's pretty good going. We'll see if that continues until the end. Like I said, I haven't got long to go. So I will check back in once I am done, and I will wrap up this vlog. Hey vlog, final update, because I have in fact finished Emperor of Ruin by Django Wexler. And yeah, I think that all of the thoughts that I have expressed in the last couple of updates still apply. I think that it was really, really well written. I think that the characters are interesting in the way that they approach their views, the way they go about their preferences for how they want this world to look, and the choices and actions that they take to make that come true. I also really like seeing these characters having to redirect and change course and change plans as things evolve, and the way they go about it and how messy that becomes, as opposed to it just being you have someone on a true course and they're unmoving and unshifting, because I find those characters very boring to read. I really did appreciate the way that they were depicted in here, that they held fast to their core beliefs, but that maybe their end goals or their intentions or their approaches would shift in accordance to what else is happening in the plot. And I think that's really good, and I think that's really important for character growth. So yeah, 4-star series overall. I had a great time with this series. I definitely think that it is one of the more innovative takes on this sibling rivalry, not rivalry because that's the wrong word, but where you have siblings on opposing sides of a confrontation. I think it's definitely one of the more innovative approaches to it because of the level of nuance. As I said, I do have my qualms with one of the characters, as I said, in terms of the way that they are depicted, and that it did feel a little bit more archetypal than the other one, which I think was handled impeccably. And it's a shame because I think my criticism of it is more that I know that the author is capable of more. The level of nuance and depth that was put in here means that I am aware of how capable the author is of actually genuinely discussing the level of nuance that I would have wanted from that character. So it's more just my understanding of their abilities and therefore feeling disappointed by it. But I think with other authors that have just been like, yeah, that's probably the best they've got. So actually even my criticism is in a way a compliment to my belief in the author's abilities. So that being said, so far this month and over this week and a bit that I've been reading, I have read the trilogy of Burning Blade and Silver Eye, all of which got 4 stars, as well as also having read the Tomb of Atuan for Magical Readathon, What Prompts These Work For. We have the first one here, which is to read a book that has the sun on the cover. This has the word sun, and I believe that this big red orb is supposed to symbolize the sun. So I've used Ashes of the Sun for that, and that is for an O in alchemy. Then the second book, which is to read a book which is the same color as your birth month flower. I used the chart that G used for the birth month flowers just because there are variables, and I just went with the one that she selected. And I do have a Lily of the Valley as my flower, which is white, so I have quite a lot of white on the cover here, and then the entire wraparound is mostly white, so this one worked for that, and that is a hue in alchemy. The next one that I have is an O in, I think it spells and incantations. I will correct myself on screen if it's not. And it is where I had to roll a 6-sided dice, and then I had to read the amount of pages that correspond with that. This one is a little bit of a stretch because this one technically ends before that, but I already had such a huge TBR, and if you did count reading the glossary, it does fit because I rolled a 6, so I needed to read between 501 and 600 pages. So I obviously read this one, which is 504. So it does fall into the parameters if you count reading the glossary, and given that I have been consulting the glossary, I figured it still counts, and I am going to be counting it. That is what this one was for. For Tombs of Atuan, I haven't really made much of a decision yet as to what to use it for. We could go have a look through what my options are. That is basically because I didn't actually have Tombs of Atuan on my official TBR. I just kind of picked it up because I wanted an ebook and it seemed a sensible one to be reading. So I could technically use this one for a book with a TV or movie adaptation, because there is a mini-series adaptation for this one, and then there is also the weird Studio Ghibli one, which is literally like a weird mishmash, I think, of multiple of the books in the series. So I could use it for that, actually. That means that then it would be Q in Psionics and Divination, though, so I would need to do a genre spin at some point, which is fine. So yeah, we're going to do that. An interesting start to the month. 4 books in so far, nothing to turn my nose up at. Series long reading vlog. So with that being said, that is the end of this vlog. Let me know if you've read this series and your thoughts on it. Let me know if you've read any other series with these tropes that you would recommend, because I do like this trope, or just based on my liking of this series, any other series that you think I might like, then do also let me know. But that is all for me for today, so thank you ever so much for watching, and I will hopefully catch you in another one soon.